soon as I keep mine over out to the side. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me welcome you to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, June the 4th, 2019 at 3 o'clock p.m. I welcome all of our people here. Hi, everybody. Madam Clerk, all of our commissioners here, along with the county manager and assistant county manager and the county attorney. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, if you check your mobile devices, please put those on silent for me. I would appreciate that. Please remember to activate the microphones when you come up and you speak to us. Gentlemen, you've had a copy of the agenda for a while. If there's not any additions or deletions, we'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Commissioner Britton has made a motion to approve. All in favor signify by raising the right hand. Madam Clerk, that will be 5-0. There are no presentations, so we'll move on to number 4, the scheduled public hearings. The first one is Community Development Zoning Map ZMA 209-03 and public hearing presented by Scott Carpenter, Deputy County Manager. Scott?
Mr. Chairman, board members, pleasure to be here today. I'm going to be brief on this item, and the main reason that this will be much more brief than other rezoning requests that we bring before the board is because this one never gave to be a spot zone from the time that we received the application. We tried to explain to the applicant, Edward Robinson, that it stood very little chance of moving forward through the planning board. But we had the first planning board meeting on March 28th, 2019, and this was just a half-acre lot. Everything else around it was zoned either R3 or industrial, so we couldn't just rezone this to commercial. So at that meeting in March, the planning board decided to table this request and to ask the applicant to please go back and try to get surrounding properties to also request the same type of zoning so they could come up with at least 2 acres of commercial. So although this request does meet the future land use plan and map, it does not get past the fact that it's a spot zone. So when we reconvened in April, they did not have any additional land to be added to this request. And in fact, some of the surrounding neighbors had come to that and had explained to us that they do not want an arcade type of business there, that they'd have trouble with it. And so that's what started this request, is we had sent a violation to the property owner because this property was being used, as an arcade. And the neighbors said that people were coming up to their houses at night at sometimes 2 in the morning, had run out of money and asked for rides or money and other things. And so the planning board voted 4-0 to recommend denial based on the fact that it was a spot zone. They couldn't really move forward with the request. And so that's where we are. And I'll be happy to answer any questions on this.
Questions or comments for Scott from any commissioner?
Scott, as I read through the information, it looked like that a couple more lots had been brought forward to be considered. Was that correct? Or?
We had identified several lots to come forward to be added to this, but the property owners were not interested in being added to this request. So when we had the planning board meeting, we identified the lots that would need to come and be added to it, but by the next meeting, none of them had been added to it, as in fact, the staff had called those property owners and asked them, and they stated they weren't interested.
So did the planning board, was the motion to approve or to deny this request?
They made a motion to approve in the affirmative, and that motion failed, 4-0. So our interpretation is that that's a motion not to approve.
It just seemed odd the way the motion read that.
It is odd.
You had 2 people that you made the motion to approve it, and then they voted against it. that's the way I read what you have here.
It was a confusing motion, a little bit, the way that it was done. I always recommend that when they make a motion, that the motion be clear for this board. So the motion should have been to deny the request, and then they should have voted to deny.
Mr. Chairman, Scott, he has two recourses: accept y'all's denial or appeal to this board.
He can come to this board, yes, and ask for an approval.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Scott? I don't want to ride this horse, but I'm assuming 4 people were at the planning board meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so one made a motion, the other one seconded it. When they voted against their own motion and second then. Oh, my goodness gracious, okay.
You said that correctly, sir. And the applicant did not come back.
Okay,
That happens pretty often. Somebody has to make a motion to get it on discussion, so I've done that before myself. Thank you.
What we have a hard time with, this is just in general, not necessarily with this one, is that if we don't write the motion as it should be made, they seem to struggle sometimes putting it together themselves to make the motion.
So are we?
But we don't want to lead, and so we try not to.
We still need to act on the matter, correct?
Yes, sir. And we would, the recommendation is to deny the request.
all right. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to item number 2 is from the county manager, adoption of the fiscal year 2019-20 budget and public hearing placeholder. Brian?
Well, as soon as we wrap up budget workshops, we will have a budget for you to adopt by that point in time. But right now, I mean, we're still in the review and
Okay.
tweak stage.
This is just for information purposes that at some point we will adopt a budget. Okay. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to the consent agenda, our first item is from BDI, will be the McAdams and Associates LLC contract approval, and that will be presented to us today by Alan Woods, Director of BDI. Alan, good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. This is a continuation of the discussion around the water tank and the grant that we received from the IDF funds. McAdams and Associates assisted us with the pre-application, and they have been working with us as we are right now, working on the pre-engineering report and the environmental. They would take care of all the administration of this process through the full application with IDF and make sure that we follow through on the complete all the requirements as far as this grant application goes. And it was approved in the authorizing resolution adopted 19th of February of this year.
All right, questions for Alan on this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I have just one. Alan, I looked at the grant writer and how much money they was going to get for writing this grant, and my question would be, can we not keep that in Burke County? Do we not have a grant writer that can write that grant? Or is that a combination, the way it reads, it could be a combination of a grant writer, overseer of the project?
That's exactly what it is. It's not just writing the grant, but they take care of the administration work all the way through the process on a $2 million grant.
So they're going to be on board with us throughout that entire process?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Alan, who pays for this if we don't get the grant?
Well, we have the funding, the first money that would come out of this would be from the funds that are set aside for the business park, so it would be covered by that. The the odds of us not getting it after being approved through preliminary are very, very small. I won't say that it's not possible, but it's highly unlikely.
Approximate timetable for us to get that tower up and running? with
It'll
water?
take a year from the time we begin construction, roughly. I think there are 3 companies in the U.S. now that are, or in the eastern U.S. that are doing those.
Other comments or questions?
We'll need to add a few things for the protection of the county to that agreement, but I should have that shortly.
Okay. Alan, you okay with that?
Sure.
No problem. Okay, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 2 is reappointments to the Child Protection Child Facility Team, presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint Kathy Smith, seat number 3, parent with a child under the age of 18, and Julie Cosby, seat number 5, at large, to the Child Protection Child Fatality Team for the remainder of 3-year terms ending April 30th, 2022.
Questions for Kay on these appointments? Okay, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving to item number 3 is appointment to the Western Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees, presented also by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to appoint a citizen to the Western Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees for seat number 3 for a 4-year term ending June 30th, 2023. Right now, we have one applicant, Mr. Bill Lennon, who has served on that board previously as the governor's appointee. I left it blank and on the consent agenda in case we get other applicants, which we normally do. But if we don't have anybody by the 18th, I'll just fill in the blank.
All right,
And if we get more, I'll add it to your decision item.
Okay. Questions for Kay on this appointment? Hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda.
Thank you.
Unless somebody else files. Moving on to item number 4 for the fiscal year 19 and 20, the general liability workers' comp insurance renewal, presented by Margaret Pierce, our Deputy County Manager and Finance Director. Margaret? Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. Insurance is provided for the county for property, general liability, and workers' comp administration through the NC Association of County Commissioners Risk Pools. We do those with a $1,000 deductible on vehicle accidents and $5,000 on buildings and regular liabilities. No excess liability coverage is recommended. This is based on conversations with the insurance company. The insurance renewal this year for general liability and property is $416,576. We will receive credits for a multi-policy discount as long as both are approved by the commissioners of $22,225, and then for doing the $5,000 deductible on buildings, we get an $8,801 credit also. These renewals, the workers' comp renewal cost is $258,329. And in addition to that amount, we would pay claims up to $350,000 deductible. These amounts are an overall increase of $39,188 from the current year, or a 6.5% increase. And we have included funds in the budget recommendation to cover these policies.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard Margaret's presentation. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have 2. I guess the first one, we don't get competitive bids on this. You just take the North Carolina bid or quote.
The county has been with the pool for some time, and one of the reasons that I recommend doing that is the fact that they're governmental specialists. They are very good and have a lot of resources that we utilize in other ways throughout the year at no cost, thanks to these policies, for mitigating risks and assisting us with all our insurance issues.
But I thought part of our bylaws was at least every several years you try to get a competitive bid on the price. How do we know we can't buy cheaper? Good as good cheaper. Is that a good way to put it?
I'll be happy to evaluate that and look toward bidding it. I don't feel like we have time this year to go through that process.
Well, it may be a bad
and I don't
idea.
know the last time.
It's just the thought process is, are we treating ourselves fairly if we don't occasionally get a competitive bid on a service? And the second question is on 61, page 61. In column G, there's slant marks and not figures, and I think before we sign that, that needs to be corrected. I would have called you, but I didn't have time today. Page 61, column G.
Oh, you're on
Hmm.
HCCPG, right? He's on the home and community care.
Is that on another one? Oh, excuse me. Well, you get two questions for one, know that?
Any other questions from Margaret? I'd just like to make a comment. I'm very proud of what NCACC does. Wayne sits on that committee for us, and Wayne, you want to speak to the issue, or anything that you might enlighten?
Well, I think the most important thing is the governing board is commissioners, and I think they have our best interests at heart. And I don't see, I don't think probably we would ever get the service that we get from them and any calls that we make to them or whatever. I just think it's a win-win-win for us.
Thank you for those comments. Any other comments or questions?
What just makes sense to me that if we're pulling risk like that with the association, it's going to be cheaper than going out to market. Not that it hurts, but to me, that's exactly why you pull. So, and you're getting that extra benefit. So, anyway, thanks.
Anything else? All right, hearing nothing else, and without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on now to number 5, in the Area Aging Home and Community Care Block Grant for the fiscal year 1920, that will be presented by Sarah Stamey with Western Piedmont Council of Governments. Hey there.
How are you?
Good.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you all for allowing me to sit before you today. As Mr. Carswell mentioned, I'm Sarah Stamey, the aging specialist with Western Piedmont Council of Governments. Tina Miller, the AAA director, is in Raleigh this week and couldn't be with you. So just a brief overview of the Human Home and Community Care Block Grant and related funds. They're granted to Burke County residents for the provision of persons over the age of 60. The Burke County Commissioners appoint the Burke County Council on Aging as the planning committee, and the Western Piedmont Council of Governments as the lead agency for planning to bring the recommendation for the board. Let's see. So this year, Burke County will receive $618,546, and that's for the fiscal year starting July 1st, running through June 30th of 2020. And this is an increase from last year in the amount of $6,561. We are just asking for the approval of that budget.
You've heard Sarah's presentation. Anybody got any questions or comments?
Same question.
The slants and the...
Yeah.
So the budget forms are developed by the North Carolina Division of Aging and Adult Services. Kent Woodson, the budget manager with the division, revised the budget forms this year. So this is the first year it's a working workbook, if you will. And the slants are automatically populated. And it depends on how the questions are answered in the previous workbooks as to what's populated in the cell in the further workbooks. And I don't have the actual workbook in front of me, but if you want to show me exactly which item it is, I can tell you if it's one that will populate or one that doesn't have a number in there.
You have that pulled up on your computer?
Me? Yes.
Sarah, you want to just kind of step around and take a
Oh,
look
yeah.
at Commissioner Taylor's computer and see if you might be able to enlighten us a little
This
bit?
requires the signature of the chairman, and
Oh, those at the bottom. I can see it better on yours. That's just because there's no other services. So it allows, the workbook allows for additional services, additional line items of services. And there's just, we don't have those additional services. So we cannot zero that out.
but these, there's 6 numbers above, and evidently it's supposed to tally those numbers.
Right, and the slashes represent zeros for their workbook, for this division's workbook.
Say that again, please.
The slashes represent the number 0
Oh.
because nothing was entered.
Mr. Taylor, the bottom of column G that you're referring to, that column is the projected reimbursement unit rate for each item. And because each one's individual to that line, there wouldn't be a total at the bottom because it's not relevant to total it.
Well, why don't we have zeros instead of backward slashes?
I guess that's just how they
Yeah.
designed the form.
Do what?
I think that's how they designed the form to make sure that nothing was put in error.
That's how the division designed it, and it's a locked workbook. So unfortunately, we do not have the availability to go in and key in a 0 or delete the slashes.
Margaret,
Thank you, ma'am.
since you're maybe looking at that same page, those totals, like say under block grant, the column A, do you presume that those should be totals at the bottom of that column?
Yes, sir.
If you look at that,
Yes, sir.
it doesn't seem like it totals. My math's not real good, but I don't see those numbers ending in a 0.
The 46,000 and the 9,000 make the 55,000 in column, the first one.
I'm looking at column A, and I hate to just go off the deep end, but if you're looking at column A, under block grant funding,
Yes,
the
sir.
total column,
The total column.
if you went to add that up, it doesn't seem like it would add up to that number, but whatever that's worth.
Calculator.
I'm happy to verify that total. I think it is 568, but I will be happy to verify that number prior to it being signed.
Well, when I add the numbers to the right, I would expect it to end in a 6, not 700, but unless I'm just not seeing something. But you can work at that. I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
You don't have to apologize. I'm
No, 8
inclined.
and 8, 8 and 8 generally equals 16, which means that whole number should end in a 6. Yes, I see that.
I'm inclined to agree with you. We're looking here the same way.
Yes.
It shouldn't end in a 0-0.
We'll get with the COG and have that document corrected.
We can do that.
Any other comments or questions?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, as you can see on that form and how that can create some questionable confusion or ignorance, either one. You got slashes in places and you got zeros in places. Should be consistent, either slashes or zeros. Thank you.
And again, it's because it's a workbook set up with multiple tabs. So one page pulls from another page, and the page that you all receive is the very last working document of the tool. So if someone answers 0 on one page, because not all services may be a unit-based service. For example, housing and home improvement, it's not a unit-based service, it's a dollar reimbursement service. So some are 0 and some are slashes because they don't have to be answered at all.
Okay, any other questions? All right, without objection, we will keep this on the consent item agenda, but Sarah, I want you to, go back, take a look, and you and Margaret get together, and let's be satisfied that Margaret's satisfied. The slashes are zeros and zeros are slashes or whatever is what. And let's make sure those total up in the columns the way they should. Would you do that for me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Okay. Moving on to item number 6 in general services will be our 5th modification and amendment to environmental services agreement presented by Miles Champion, our general services director. Brother Miles.
Good afternoon. The agreement for transportation and disposal of county solid waste expires June 30th. A new agreement, the 5th modification and amendment to environmental services agreement, is submitted for the board's consideration. The term is for 5 years, July 1 of 2019 to June of 2024. and may be renewed for an additional 5-year term upon mutual written consent. The agreement includes a per-ton fee of $45.11 per ton, plus the North Carolina landfill disposal tax, which is currently $2 per ton. The parties further agree that the rate shall be adjusted to increase according with the CPI as follows. Effective on July 1 of each year during the term, commencing on July 1 of 2020, the disposal fees shall be adjusted by the lesser of the 2.75% or the increase in the CPI. For the CPI calculation, rates will be adjusted using the January through December trailing 12 months average CPI compared to the 12 months preceding. The contractor shall provide notice to the county in March of any disposal fee increases. The new rate is included in this coming year's budget. Approval is recommended.
All right, thank you, Miles. Questions, commissioners?
Miles, can you give us an example of that 2.75% in versus of the $2? Are we talking pennies here or dollars or what?
Well, I can't run the numbers right here in my head, but it's related to CPI, and it would have to be calculated each year. Now $2 per ton sales tax is set by North Carolina. The rate adjustment is from CPI or the percentage, the per ton price.
Mr. Taylor, I can clarify. The $2 is a state set per ton fee. That is not affected by the CPI or percentage. The state set that $2 years ago and has not yet increased it. It is an amount that is sent to them for every ton collected. The CPI would only affect the $45.11 per ton that is funds that are retained by Republic.
Yeah, that's easy. I just wondered about the 2.75 based on, is that based on the $45.11 a ton?
Yes, sir. You want to know an amount that would be?
Yeah, I can do that in my head. 45 cents is 90, and 75% of 45, about $1.20, which would be less. That's what I was trying to get at, is why we can't undo the $2. So would be on top of the $2, correct?
The $2 is paid to the state.
Yep.
It's not kept by them, so it is not affected by the CPI, has nothing to do with the increase. The 2.75 on the $45 is $1.24. So that's the maximum per ton it could increase each year, but the $2 will stay there unless the state changes that fee.
I got you.
So if the CPI were less, the way I read it, that's what the increase would be. It says the lesser of the 2.75 or the CPI.
Right, but the CPI and the 2.75% have nothing to do with the $2.
Right, I got that.
Okay, sorry.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 7 is the approval of the recycling contract presented by Miles Champion. Miles?
Yes, this is a recycling contract between Burke County and Republic Services doing business as GDS Recycling Services. Currently, we haul recycling materials with our trucks and our personnel to Conover's MRF and dispose of it there at no cost. This agreement is been generated by GDS and has costs associated with disposal of recycled materials. This is a 3-year agreement that can be renewed, and the adjustments to pricing can be done both as an annual increase. Also, if there's any changes in law that requires them to adjust prices, or depending on market conditions, it can go up or down. Later in the agreement, you can look back and the rates, we only have residential single stream and source separated like glass. Glass is separated. Residential single stream is your plastics. The residential single stream cost for us to haul that down there is $125 a ton delivered to the facility, and the source separated glass is $40 a ton. If they have a substantial amount of residual or residue in the recycle, then they charge $50.70 per ton to dispose of the residual.
All right, you've heard Miles's presentation. Any questions or comments, please?
Miles, did I understand you said currently we're not paying anything to deliver this?
Correct.
So what kind of impact are we talking about here?
I knew you would ask me that. It is a substantial impact. I do not have a total number for the annual. Do you have that in your budget? Okay.
It's approximately, right now we are paying for glass, and it's approximately $3,000 a year. The estimated increase based on our current tonnage over the average of the last 2 years will be about another $14,000. So we'll have about a total of $17,000 cost in recycling, taking these items there. They have not been charging us in the past, and what we understood in our negotiations was that they had to go across the board, and they've started charging everyone. But customers who were already doing waste transferring were last to be put on a fee. So we have stayed out of that for approximately a year, is our understanding from when other people were put on a fee. So,
Do we have any other options?
We have an option on glass. We have approval from the state that we can use that crushed in our landfill access roads so that we don't have to haul it, and that is approved by the state. We don't have any other options for recyclable plastics at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Margaret, you stated that was a total of $17,000 a year. How do we recoup that? Who pays that? We pay that out of the trash collection fee,
landfill fees.
but we didn't have to go up on the fees and able to do it.
He did go up on the fees. It is in the proposed fee increases that Miles recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 8 from the Health Department is the Child Protection Child Facility Teams Fiscal Year 18-19 report presented by Rebecca McLeod, our Health Director. Rebecca?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners,
Thank you.
everybody.
Hello.
I get lost going down the list. Hey, how are you? It's one more time I come back before you, and it's the annual report of our Child Fatality Child Protection Team report. And it is a requirement of the North Carolina General Statute 7B 1406. And pretty much this team, what we look at throughout the year is we review all child deaths within Burke County, see if there's any system recommendations that can be made or any problems that we can identify system-wide. And this past year, we had 16 children's deaths. And when the teams went through and looked at the different types of deaths that we had, and I've kind of listed them out over to the left-hand side on your report for you, Most of them were premature deaths or children who were infant deaths or sudden infant deaths or co-sleeping deaths. That's the majority. We did have some who, because of collisions in cars, whether they were drivers or passengers, then we had ATV accidents. So systems identified problems. We didn't really find any, but we were making recommendations back to Safe Kids. We have a very strong Safe Kids in this coalition in this county, and making sure that we are assuring that teenagers are wearing their seatbelts, that adults are wearing their seatbelts, that the children are in the right car seat for them, that the parents use correctly every time. Then we also bought 1,100 magnets, because we only get $641 from the state to do anything. We bought English and Spanish for co-sleeping so that we could better educate the parents to remind them, you don't really want to co-sleep with your child. It's very popular and it's very hard to break that cycle. So we bought magnets so that we can give them out in the doctor's offices, at daycares, to help promote safe sleeping. So that's my report.
Questions for Rebecca? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Rebecca. Moving on to item number 9 from JCPC is the approval of pass-through funding for the Children's Hope Alliance Home Remedies from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, presented by Rebecca and AJ Katu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the past few years, you've...
AJ, pull your microphone over in front of you, please.
Okay, is that better?
Close.
In the past few years, you'll remember that the Children's Hope Alliance, also known as Barium Springs, has had funding through the Department of Public Safety, and they asked that Burke County be the pass-through for those funds. They service both the 25th and the 27th Judicial District. The Juvenile Crime Prevention Council is glad that they provide level 2 services to youth who come out of YDC and who are at risk of going into YDC.
Youth Detention
Youth
Center.
Detention Center, thank you. And that's a difficult service to procure, and so we're happy to have them, and we hope you'll approve that pass-through.
It actually increased. It was 94,000 last year, and the state's gone up to 100,000 for them this year, which I thought was good.
All right, questions? Questions for Rebecca or AJ? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 10 from JCPC is removals and reappointments and appointments to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council.
Mr. Chair, if I might, on that Pastor Grant, if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and add that to your budget finalization so that it's already included, because we didn't have that information at the time we prepared it.
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to make some appointments and reappointments to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. Seat number 22 is occupied by our very own Spring Williams Bird. It's an at-large seat. She does not wish to be considered for reappointment. We request the reappointment of Ryan Lander for seat number 2, Steve Wisnett for seat number 3. We're still waiting to hear back from Ron Abernathy on seat number 5. If it's not him, it could be a designee, so stay tuned for seat number 5. Seat number 7 is Hillary Biggerstaff. Seat 8 is Jennifer Forney. Seat number 10, Jasper Hemphill. Seat number 16, Doug Hartez. Seat 17 is Rebecca McLeod. And seat 20 is Stephen Moody. We also request the appointment of Willow Conrad for seat number 12 for the student under the age of 18. And Willow is Tara Conrad's daughter. And Tara serves on this committee as well, so she can bring Willow to the meeting, which alleviates some of those transportation problems that the student sometimes has. And then to replace Spring, we've got an application from Nikki Carpenter, our 4-H agent, to fill seat number 22.
All right, questions for Kay on the appointments and reappointments? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 11 from JCPC is the approval of the fiscal year 20 county plan addendum.
We've already presented the county plan to you for your approval earlier this year. One of the things with raise the age legislation that's coming about in January is we were recommended by the regional consultant to go ahead and look and plan for what additional funds we may need based off the number of youth. So our outreach committee met and we presented in your packet the priorities of what they saw as what we would need with the potential amounts of funding. We are not asking for any county funding on this. This will be all from state funding. So I don't know if you, I'm not gonna sit here and read these all to you, but it's for transportation, mentoring, vocational skills, teen court, and restitution. So if you have any questions about the specific services, they met the priority areas that were already identified in our compendium that we do on services and the gaps.
All right, questions for Rebecca or AJ? Okay, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, ladies, so
Thanks so
much.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 12 will be from Senior Services. American Food Service LLC contract for a nutrition program presented by Roxanne Powell, our Senior Services Director.
Good afternoon, Commissioner and everyone.
Good afternoon.
So I have before you, this is our annual renewal for the nutrition services contract with American Food Services. This is for the fiscal year 2019-20. This contract includes the preparation of the meals, transportation, and delivery of the meals to our drop sites, and this is for our home delivered and congregate nutrition program. 90% of this funding is provided by the Home and Community Care Block Grant, and the 10% local match has been budgeted already. So I am requesting approval of the said contract and authorize the county manager to execute such.
Okay, questions, gentlemen, about the contract? All right, hearing none without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda.
Sir, thank you very
Roxanne.
much.
Moving on to items number 13 and 14 will be from our tax department. This will be our tax collection report for May 2019 and our release refund report for 2019. And I don't think Danny is here today.
Danny's not here, I'm here. Good afternoon. On our collection report, it looks like on current year taxes, we're at 102.22. That does include the property tax and motor vehicles. Motor vehicles were at 97.02 and a little over 100% on property tax. On our delinquent collections, we're at 81.21 and late list penalty, we're at 97.78%.
Questions on the tax collection report? All right, let's move on.
On the tax system release and refunds, there's a net release of $24,789 with a refund of $267.86. And on the VTS, which is the vehicles, there was a refund of $270.69.
All right, gentlemen, questions?
There was two of those releases that were kind of high, and he said that there's two releases on each of those bills. There's one for the penalty and one for the tax, and it was a hanger that was picked up. It was discovered at the airport, and long story short, it was double listed.
That was the $5,000 one?
No, it was like 11,000 and 12,000.
Oh, for aviation LLC?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, without objection, this will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our items for decision. Our first one will be from BD. Park, presented by Alan Wood, BDI President and CEO. Alan?
of like deja vu all over again, huh? This is actually a continuation of number one. It has to do with the water tank and how we set up to recoup the funding as the county would be supplying the match. We have done an adaptation on the interlocal agreement that will allow any funds that are collected, or when funds will start to be collected on the property tax, to reimburse the county on this and the city for their match as well, prior to the other entities, partners, receiving a distribution. All the other partners have signed off on this agreement or have approved it, and so it is ready for the everyone's signature if the county so chooses to adopt this. So the way that it looks like it would work, and we're still waiting on, well, we won't know exact numbers of what this reimbursement would be until we start getting the bids. But we're figuring the range we gave was $240,000 up to about $430,000, depending on what those bids look like. And then once that happens, we get someone into business, park tax values start rolling in, the county would receive their reimbursement, and then the city would be, and then after that is paid off, the funds start to be distributed to the partners per the previous agreement.
All right, questions for Alan?
Mr. Chairman, I have one, I'm assuming, and that's a bad thing to do, Alan. I assume we have a partner or partners who are not wanting to participate in some of the investment.
What we had done is precluding going to each one of them and asking for the share, is that they would defer their payment back on their other investment until this was cleared. So at the way it's set up, the Morganton, with their assistance with the engineering and planning, and the Burke would take care, the county of Burke would take care of the match. And then they would, after that was reimbursed, then the regular process would come in.
Well, this field appears to me to be both fair and appropriate to do that, so. Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on for items for decision. Thank you, Alan. Moving on to item number 2 is the renewal of the janitorial services contract from General Services, presented by Miles Champion. Miles?
Yes, the annual contract for janitorial services expires June 30th, 2019. The renewal contract is being finalized and will be presented at the regular meeting.
Questions for Miles? Any changes in the contract, Miles, from last year?
Possible increase in cost, minor increase.
Minor?
Mm-hmm.
Service has been, I think, a little bit better than it has been in the past. Appreciate you talking to those folks. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the items for decision. Thank you, Miles.
Thank you.
Any other reports that need to come before the board at this time, or discussion items? Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may or may not know, we've kind of been working on an updated flag for the county. And if the board would like to approve the flag design so that we can get it ordered before year end, we would request that this be added to your consent agenda.
Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the types of pictures of flags that were submitted?
Got one right here. Where did it go? This is a rough concept that Shane and Lance have been working on. It incorporates the colors of our logo along with significant features of the county. And historically, we found in the minutes where flags did come before the board, so we'd be happy to bring it if you want us to. If you'd like to see the old flag, I'd be happy to get it off the podium. Yeah, I'll show it for you.
Yeah, we're seeing that. Pay attention. Almost folded up. Ta-da.
Ta-da. Yeah. All right, gentlemen, what's your pleasure about wanting a new flag for the county? Okay. Okay to put it on the consent agenda then? Bring it on in? Any problems? Any objections? I got a over here.
Looks better.
I don't think we'll put it on the consent agenda. I would like to take it, get some opinion. Just to see what, I'd like to have one of these and one of them. Just email it to me.
All right, we'll leave it off for a while.
Okay.
Okay, go to working on it, okay?
Yes, sir.
Anything else to come before the board?
Mr. Chairman, I did want to make sure everybody was aware it was emailed to Kay, and actually I got my copy through Kay instead of the Western Piedmont Council of Government. But the 2019 North Carolina Water Quality Conference date is July 25th and 26th. They moved that up 1 month because they felt like getting into the school year hurt their attendance a little bit, so it's moved up. And I had another question on whatever happened to the complaint of the storage building on Moose Lodge Road. Did that get resolved, or is that still an issue?
We had the complaint, and it was being checked into by 4 different people. Mr. County Manager, you want to touch on that?
Well, I can get with Scott and see where they are with that.
They're still working on it. It's my understanding all the proper permits were pulled, and that the fellow had done everything that he was supposed to do, and that the complaints that we're getting by email might have been erroneous complaints. So there's no finalization, no. They're still checking on it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, this time I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Madam Clerk, that'll be 5-0, and we will take a break until we come back in our recess session no sooner than 4 o'clock.